there's definitely a trust gap between and the nonprofit sector. Everyone is always obsessed with like how effective is my money, or like what's the overhead fee of this specific nonprofit, and we have a quite, I think, maybe controversial take on that we think nonprofits globally, like 50 million people are on a payroll from a nonprofit, and there are 200 million volunteers. So the vast majority of nonprofit works is actually unpaid. So that's a good way to start thinking about it. And then of those people on the payroll, there's still like a very minimal or small overhead fee, which is basically the heart or the skeleton of a nonprofit organizations. It's salaries and it's rent, basically. So it's like, the core. And people are so obsessed with looking at those overhead costs. But it's a huge mistake, because if you spend more on overhead, if you attract the right individuals, and if you, and who can really drive this cause and get maybe a similar salary as you would be having in the public or the private sector, then that would lead to vast larger impact at scale. And you also look a lot on the cost side without adhering to the income part of it. So if you have, let's say, 50% overhead, but with that overhead you can grow, 200% per year, instead of having 5% overhead, but growing just 2% per year. And that investment will probably over longer time obviously be worth a lot more. So it's really hard actually, because you, as a donor, you want just a quick solution, right?
Exactly.
You want to know that, okay, my money is well spent. My the causes that matters to me are impacted by this gift of mine. But then you look at the wrong KPIs, basically, because it's not as simple. And you look at maybe the overhead spend instead of looking at the larger picture. And then there's definitely a trust issue, which we try to gap with just like, I think one of the core, how do you say, principles or maybe axioms of digitalization in general is that it leads to, at least in democratic states, it leads to transparency. And the nonprofit sector is the most transparent, much more transparent than the public or the private sector. So, and then it's you have a lot of things against you.